That's often creating intimidating environments, particularly for our NHS staff.
As strikes loom and cancer waiting times are missed, NHS workers say they feel intimidated by the England flag flying places around the country, to the extent that they say that there are no-go zones for them. What are they on about?
Call and WhatsApp message now 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tom Swoolbridge on LBC.
Very good afternoon to you. This hour,
I would draw on all of the experience that I've had to provide that stability and then also to grow our economy, to take advantage of some of the opportunities that we've got.
they promised not to increase the three main taxes. They said it was a moral duty to find ways to stop spending so much on welfare. They promised to grow the economy. And yet, in another sign of the big trouble for the Chancellor, but more importantly, of course, for the country, unemployment has now reached levels not seen since the end of the pandemic. Unemployment now at 5%, up from 4.8%, a move that surprised economists, who frankly must permanently have their eyebrows raised. A tax on jobs has led to fewer jobs. Who'd have thunk it? Unless, of course, this is all down to Brexit, COVID, and or austerity as well. Hard for the Chancellor to pin it on those things, given unemployment was lower than it is now before she came into number 11. It is a pretty mad sequence of events as well to have raised national insurance on jobs, putting people out of work or stopping people being employed, only to then raise taxes on work, potentially via income tax in the budget in a few weeks' time. If they had any semblance of an idea of what they were doing, knowing that they weren't going to keep their promises on tax rises, you'd want as many people in work as possible before you then screw them for more of their efforts. But no, now we have fewer people in work, and those fewer people are going to be told they have to contribute even more. What's Rachel Reeves going to pin this rise in unemployment on? Do you blame her? Have you got evidence with which to put the blame on her because your business was going to hire 4 people but could only hire 2 because of the increase to employers' national insurance? The thing they say about being unemployed, of course, is that you never have a day off. So if you are out of work or you're looking for work, how hard is it? And I'd like to talk to you particularly if you've just come out of school or university. You've done what you thought was the right thing. You went to university, you got the degree, you've come out into the big bad world, and there is just nothing there for you. Or there is, but you're not willing to take it. 0345 6060 973 is the number. Unemployment rising to levels not seen since February 2021. Is that anything to do with Rachel Reeves at all? Or is that Brexit, COVID, austerity, the headwinds of the global trading environment? Does it have nothing to do with Labour at all, this bit of economic news? And what is the impact of it in your household? Liam Halligan is an economist and author of the brilliant Substack, When the Facts Change. Good to speak to you, Liam. Thank you very much indeed for coming on. What do we put this rise in unemployment down to?
Good to be with you, Tom. I think there's a pretty straight line between the rise in unemployment from 4.4% of the workforce in July 2024 when Labour were elected to, as you just said, 5% now, the highest since the pandemic. It's not as if unemployment has risen sharply in other countries across the Western world during that period. I put it down to 3 main things. The first thing is that increase in employer national insurance contributions. It was announced in October, in her first budget in October, the so-called Halloween budget 2024, and it was introduced in April. Every single month pretty much since last October, hiring is falling. We've lost 180,000 payroll jobs. That's the first thing, the so-called tax on jobs, which you mentioned. The second thing is the Employment Rights Bill, which is about to come in, which gives you unfair dismissal rights as a new employee from day one, as well as lots of other benefits. At the moment, there's a probation period of up to 2 years. That is really spooking a lot of businesses, particularly small and medium-sized enterprises. They're worried about vexatious claims from day one from new employees. Of course, most employees just want to go to work and do a good job. I'm sure the vast majority of LBC listeners, Tom, but there are vexatious people out there. So that's the second thing, the tax on jobs, the new Employment Rights Bill, which is really back to the 70s legislation. And the third thing is the general loss of business confidence. the likes of the CBI, the likes of the IOD, they're not, they don't usually like to attack sitting governments. These are big lobbying organisations that like to try and influence sitting governments. But they really are now flashing red warning signs about very, very low levels of business confidence. Again, the lowest since COVID. So all those three things really have created a kind of perfect storm for employment, which is pushing up unemployment, and particularly for youngsters, Tom, because that national insurance increase for employers, it came in from £5,000. The threshold was lowered from £12,500. Plus the minimum wage was hiked massively by Reeves for younger workers. It went up by a massive inflation busting 17%. And of course, businesses must pay that. So all these things are combining, I'm afraid, for this really policy-driven increase in unemployment.
Two things. Firstly, if you elect a left-wing government, you get left-wing things. So tax and spend is going to increase. The government talked about being the friends of business, but this employment rights bill doesn't seem to have been particularly friendly to some of those businesses and has perhaps knocked a bit of that business confidence. So maybe this isn't a surprise, and actually maybe this is what people who voted Labour sort of wanted to happen, broadly speaking. But this is one of the unintended consequences of it. Second thing is, let's assume that the Treasury thought that this might be a possibility. If you raise national insurance contributions for employers, it might slow down the jobs market. Do you think this budget is going to try and remedy that in some way by saying, well, we're going to raise a lot of money through taxes and we're going to spend it on capital investment in big infrastructure projects? Look, business, we're ready to support you. Off you go, do your thing.
Well, on the first point, Labour won the election fair and square. Of course, they won it on 33% of a 60% turnout. They got 20% of the electorate, so 4 in 5 people didn't vote Labour. And there was nothing in their manifesto, nothing about a £40 billion increase in taxation within months of them taking office, the biggest tax-raising budget for over 30 years. And since then, most of the time since last October, Rachel Reeves has been saying that was a once in a generation, we won't come back for more. So, there are broken promises all over the place. The second thing I'd say is that, yes, this is a left-wing government, but Tony Blair was a broadly left-wing government and he didn't wreck the economy. And the danger
he's
here...
against this, Liam, isn't he? He's come out in the last few weeks to say, particularly of the employment rights bill,
Indeed.
Slow down.
Not just Tony Blair, also, the sacred Holy Resolution Foundation, the place where, a big bunch of Labour's cone-headed, nerdy special advisors who are now in Downing Street came from, the place where their pensions minister, Torsten Bell, who's rumoured to be writing this budget, comes from. And indeed, the Resolution Foundation, decent people, very analytical, unashamedly left-wing, even they say, let's call it what it is, Angela Rayner's employment rights bill, it is the Red Queen who's pulling the strings of this legislation, and Labour backbenchers will go absolutely nuts unless it goes through Parliament in a largely undiluted form. This employment rights bill is really, really worrying even the big business lobby groups who can handle all the red tape. How about the silent majority of those small businesses? I know many small business owners and employees listen to LBC. These small businesses cannot handle this employment rights bill. And they employ 2/3 of our people, Tom. And they are the bedrock of our growth, the spine of our economy. So, a left-wing government can win fair and square, but we're now at the point where taxation is going up so sharply that it's actually deeply counterproductive. We are now thwarting growth with too much taxation, and that means rather than plug a gap in the public finances and make the public finances stronger, I'm afraid, and I say this, with regret, that the tax rises we've got coming in now, as opposed to spending controls, which we should be having to some extent, those tax rises will slow the economy even more, slower hiring even more, slower investment even more, less growth, which will actually, Tom, make the public finances weaker.
And I thought I was the bearer of bad news. Liam, appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Liam Halligan is an economist and author of the Substack When.
Liam, thank you so much for coming on. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
In Britain, the CEO of Reed, James Reed, is going to be here in the next 10 minutes or so.